We have been asked to join you today and tell you a story. You're all storytellers in the room, and now we're very excited to tell you a story that's new and unique, a story that's true, it's never been told before, it's written around the world thousands of times a day, has millions of contributors, and I believe is vital for the future of radio. It's a story of your station and your listeners in the connected car. Like any great story, we're going to learn who, when, where, how, and what. You will get insights into your audience that you've never, ever had before. The plot is written by 90,000 radio stations around the world. The characters are millions of cars that are currently deployed around the world, as you can see by this map, using DTS AutoStage. And the setting, 144 countries around the world. And it's a data-driven story. For the first time, you are going to get a data-driven view of your audience like never been before. And in the last 6 months, we have been able to observe, measure, and report over 8 billion listening engagements between broadcast radio and the in-car driver. This story is important. It helps you deliver operational excellence in connected cars. It informs you about how your programming is connecting with your audience. And it deepens your understanding of where, when, and how they're listening. Analog versus DAB, HD radio versus analog. And it's a framework where you can now execute infrastructure planning and look at your capital investments and how you're deploying and serving your audience. So now let's hear those stories and let's meet the storytellers. Please, Caroline.
Hi, everyone. I'm Caroline Beasley, CEO of Beasley Media Group. We have 61 stations in 14 markets in the US, and we're the 5th largest broadcaster in America. So we're really excited to be here. Thank you, Joe and Xperi, for allowing me to be here on stage with you, and very happy to be here with you as well.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. I'm Lindsey Mack. I'm the Senior Manager for DAB and BBC Sounds External Affairs. And I think a lot of you probably know quite a lot about the BBC already. So we have 11 national stations, which includes the World Service, and then 46 local radio stations and some of the regional stations as well. And we have a mix of platforms, which is DAB, FM, medium wave, long wave, and online. And we are doing a lot of work now, as I think everyone is looking at the challenges that online is coming, and well, we're facing really. And so obviously BBC Sounds is one of our key platforms going forward. Again, delighted to be here, and it's great to see some of this data that I know Joe is going to share with you. I should just say, actually, just so you're aware, that in the UK, we actually do have our own measurement system as well, called Radar, which just measures DAB and analog and online listening and DTV, but not to the great detail that the DTS solution is being able to show.
Great, thank you both. So the story we're going to tell begins with the listener. And we're going to look at 2 radio stations, one a regional local station owned by Beasley and a national station owned by the BBC. And if you look at this radio, this represents the modern radio experience that AutoStage is now delivering to your listeners in cars. You can take a look during the break. We have 2 vehicles outside, a Tesla and Mercedes, and you can see for yourself what this new user experience will deliver. But what's important in telling any story is having a platform to understand your content. And what we're representing here is what we call the broadcaster portal. It's where broadcasters control the narrative, control their content with their audience. So Caroline and Lindsey, when you see a platform like this that displays the information about your station, is this a helpful thing for you to see all in one place? I'd be curious how your teams are reacting to having this kind of platform available.
So I love this. because number one, I can, hold my teams accountable. It's a snapshot of all of our stations here in one place. I can look at the logos here, make sure that they're branded properly, and then also further to the side, I can look at, increase or decrease in listening. And if there's a decrease in listening, then I'm going to want to know why. And, you can dig into that even further. So it just really helps us become a better content provider.
Absolutely. And Lindsey, for the BBC?
Yeah, again, this gives us a really good snapshot. With Radar, we only get quarterly data. So with this, it's obviously within 24 hours, we can see this data. I think particularly helpful to us is that we can actually ensure that our metadata is displayed correctly. I think a lot of broadcasters struggle with providing metadata to lots of other third parties as well, who actually implement it correctly. But there are some probably on some of the car manufacturers who haven't been able to do that. Mm-hmm. And we have instances where some of the cars display our logos that could be 3 or 4 years out of date. So whereas this, any changes we make, we can do it instantly.
Yeah, and that's very important to the car companies. As we hear, and we've seen the rollout around the world, the accuracy and ability of broadcasters to act quickly to change data and deploy that out to the cars is critical. And that's the fundamental reason the car companies have allowed us to aggregate this data is to give it back to broadcasters so you can understand what's going on with your stations. And here I think, Caroline, you alluded to this, a little more detail about the stations where you maintain editorial control. And maybe speak to that concept, because there are a lot of technology platforms out there that don't necessarily ensure you as broadcasters retain that control.
Right, so this is our information that's going over, across the air that our audience is looking at. So, we want to provide a great listening experience to our audience, just as you all want us to provide a great listening experience to our audience. And this helps us because, again, as Lindsey said, it ensures that our branding is correct. It ensures that, the information, the metadata, everything else on there is correct. And then also the 7-day outlook, or not outlook, or recap, if you will, in terms of listening. We can dig into that even further and find out, well, why is Friday higher than Thursday or whatever? So it really is very helpful to us in helping us manage our content. And there are a few slides going forward that really helps us with our advertisers as well.
Yeah.
Lindsey?
Yeah. No, I agree with everything Caroline said. I think it also where it's helpful for us, if there's some sort of emergency in terms of anything, that we can change things very, very quickly. So it's very reactive. And so we don't have to rely on anyone else to do it for us. So we can actually do it within our teams ourselves. And it also, gives us a lot of information, and also to our listeners on specific events or anything else that we're covering as well. So there's a lot of robust, strong data here.
So let's get into the stories now. So what you're seeing here, I'm very excited. We came to this industry about 5 years ago and said, we think we can deliver this. We think we can deliver these insights if you trust us as your integration partner. And to see something like this that basically characterizes your audience in your market and doing this globally, I think is an extremely valuable tool to the broadcaster. So what are you seeing here about your audience? Because you have two very different charts.
Yes, well, I wish my chart was like Lindsey's. That's the first thing I'm seeing here. But aside from that, look, this data, we haven't been able to get access to this data as quickly as we're able to with your technology. I mean, a 24-hour turnaround, so it's really important, it's very critical, again, to help us with the content. So I don't know if you have anything else to add, but it's just like almost 24-hour delayed data, and that's important.
I mean, I have to admit that I deliberately asked Joe to actually include Radio 2 as being sort of the biggest station in the UK.
Okay, so I had no choice. So Joe, we're going to have to speak about this.
And it's a station that obviously appeals to sort of, an age group from 35 to sort of 54. And interestingly, actually, 8 million of those listeners actually listen to Radio 2 in the car. So again, this is actually really important to us because we haven't been able to really track in-car data so specifically like this. So I know it's very early days because numbers are still very small, but as this continues to evolve, I think this could be pretty powerful for us.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to reiterate. This is a relatively small sample size. Yeah. We only have 5 car brands that are currently supporting AutoStage. So this only represents in-car listening in those brands. And this is not a currency. You mentioned Radar before. Yep. This is not designed to replace Nielsen or whatever your rating agencies are today. This is designed to give you timely insights so you can better understand what's going on in the car. This is one of my favorites because this is where you can really see the immediacy and the impact of your programming. What you're seeing here is basically your audience flow throughout the day. And I hope you can see in the audience that there's 2 colors. There's an orange color, which represents the day that's selected on the chart. And then the background, there's a gray line, which is basically representing the average of every one of those days in our database. So what that means is every Monday, in this case, for WJRZ. And something funny happened on the 29th of May. Caroline, any insight there?
Yeah, so May 29th was a holiday, and WJRZ is a classic hit station located near the shore in New Jersey. So what we're seeing here is that looks like a lot of people went to the shore, I presume, because that day was really pretty in the Northeast as well. So there was a lot of listening in the early morning hours as they were likely getting ready and driving to the shore. And then, it just dropped off once the people got there.
Yeah, and if you know the Jersey Shore, the traffic can be horrible. So 2 hours in beach traffic is definitely likely. Lindsey, Radio 2 looks pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, this is a typical graph, actually, of Radio 2, where we see most of our listening done at breakfast time and then also at drive time in the evenings. So that's actually a very, very true picture.
Yeah. One of the interesting use cases we did see was when the Queen passed away.
Yeah.
That day, the radio behavior and the audience movement across the channels was significant, expected, but very significant to be able to see that.
Yeah.
This one really excites a lot of people in the industry because it represents where your listeners are. And I can speak about why this is important on multiple dimensions, from infrastructure planning to advertising sales to market development opportunities. But maybe you can tell us, what do you see in these charts? Are these what you would expect to see from your audience?
Yeah, I mean, this is really helpful because it shows us where our audience is primarily located. So if we want to target, certain promotions or target our audience for any kind of event or whatever it is that we may be doing, then, we pretty much know the zip codes that we can target to. In addition to that, as we're going out, we're a for-profit company. As we're going out and selling to local advertisers, it's really helpful to be able to, connect the advertisers with the audience. So this is helpful for the advertisers as well.
Yeah, very similar. For us, again, it's what this does is actually shows us a little bit more about local radio as well. So it would help us, whilst it's a national, Radio 2 is a national station, we can actually work then with our local radio station in that area. So that's where you can start doing a lot of cross-promotion and maybe cross-content sharing as well. So again, really, really key, just to see where people are going, what they're doing. And it'd be interesting to actually track that, over a week or 2 weeks. Or when there's an event on, a few weeks ago we had Radio 1 big weekend in Scotland, in Dundee, and the numbers went up, sky high.
Sure.
And again, a lot of people in the car as well listening. So this is the sort of thing that is going to be really useful for us.
Yeah, and this is just the beginning. But what's really interesting, I think, to the DAB audience of broadcasters is how this measurement capability can give you a perspective of how your audience is listening. I think about when Norway did the switchover. If they had information like this that represented the analog listening versus DAB listening, which is what you're seeing here. Radio 2 is on, hundreds of analog frequencies across the country, and one DAB National Mux, which is represented here. And I think that's a very unique perspective for infrastructure planning.
And I think also where this could be really helpful for us, because what this data can also do, it can actually split the difference between medium wave and FM listening as well as DAB. And in the UK, we are now obviously in discussions around switching off medium wave in 2026. Again, what this data will do, it should be able to pinpoint areas where we might not have been able to target or where medium wave listening is still quite high. And that, for us, in terms of getting over the switch off over message, is again very important. And I know what these maps are going to do, which we're working on with you, is to try and overlay them. So we'll have DAB, FM, medium wave, and that's going to be really key so we can see where maybe some of the gaps are.
Yeah, you know, again, what you're seeing here is a heat map that represents the vehicles, the actual vehicle location. When you overlay that with your broadcast signal coverage, you're really going to get a great view of your audience. And this next one, I think, is fun and potentially hugely valuable to certainly commercial broadcasters. Because we're measuring the data consumption and because broadcasters are sending us directly live data about what they're playing, we're able to measure audience, individual audio events and tell you exactly how many listeners are listening to a song, are listening to an ad. So we put this together. This is Top Charts. This basically shows you a list of the most listened to songs on your radio station. It's not the most played, but I would venture that they're pretty highly correlated. But imagine this for your program directors, and when we start doing this for ads, for your general sellers.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this because it's going to help our music directors tremendously, but also, too, you just mentioned for ads. And, you know, if we're playing an ad for an advertiser and there's tune out, we need to know because it's not effective. So it's going to be a win-win all the way around. So I'm very excited about this technology.
Yeah, it's definitely something more suited to commercial radio, I think, to be very honest.
Absolutely. But, you know, we've seen interesting reactions from program directors where they put a new song in a rotation and it's overperforming of what they would expect. So this is just the beginning of the story that you're going to be able to tell as you deliver content into connected cars. This is built on a reasonable set of expectations from the broadcasters and the car companies. And I think it's really going to unlock amazing potential. And as I mentioned, we're just at the beginning here. We've got 5 OEMs that are currently launched. We'll launch with 4 more in the next couple of months. And we'll be at a total of 13 by this time next year. So there are millions of cars that you can deliver content to. Participating in the platform is free to broadcasters. The analytics are available to you all free. There's no charge. The data is yours. It's yours to do with what you want. So if you haven't, please join us. Come see the car and write the story of your station in the connected car. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you very much.